I was born in Dominican Republic. I had a good childhood. But then when I was about 11, my parents decided to move to the United States. So then my mom used to make me go to church. She used to try to force me. I used to hate going to church. I used to sit in the front row and fall asleep on purpose because I hated to go to church. But I used to love church camp because of the girls and because of basketball. Even in camp, I remember this one time where I got up in class and was like, the reason why I don't become a Christian is because all of you Christians are hypocrites. So I was really against Christianity. I don't know, I just think, you see a lot of people who profess to be Christians at times and don't act like they're supposed to. It was a bad view that I had about Christianity. I think in my senior year, I was pretty disappointed with myself because I felt like I was a kid with a lot of potential, but I didn't live up to my potential, and I did a lot of stupid stuff in high school. And I was pretty disappointed about my life. It really just hit me that I needed to change, and I got baptized. So when I first started getting interested, I just kept asking questions after questions after questions. Emily Ferenzi, she asked me to study the Bible at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I knew that Roger had just been baptized a couple months before. We both attended the same camp in July, and we left in August and went down to the same college. I asked him one morning if he wanted to read Matthew in the mornings, and he surprised me by saying yes, and so it kind of all started there.
At first I didn't want to do it, but I was like, man, I can't look like a wimp in front of a girl. So I decided to wake up at 7. We started studying the job, and that was, to change me. I started going to church more and more. I'm a good people person, so I've always loved people, I always care about them. I'm very energetic and enthusiastic, and I think that's helpful. And I think God has blessed me with the ability to speak publicly. So that made it a lot easier for me to preach.
Y arrepiéntete y haz las cosas que hiciste al principio, si no vendré a ti, quitaré tu candelero de su lugar, si no te arrepientes. ¿Qué dice que yo tengo que hacer? Arrepentirse.
I mean, it was kind of like I needed to preach. At first I wasn't thinking that I needed to full-time preach. I always thought that I was just gonna, get a job or finish school and preach at the same time. But I think then it became evident that if I wanted to be more serious about preaching, that I needed to spend a large amount of time studying and doing different Bible studies. I talked to some older people who've been preaching for a while, and they told me that I should study about 4 or 5 hours a day, which the first time I heard, I was like, that's crazy, that's so much time. But then I realized that I needed to learn, just like anybody in any profession. You need to learn a lot in order to teach, because you're not useful if you're not able, if you don't know more.
Yeah, in other words, Peter, you're being a hypocrite. Before these people came, you were all happy with the Gentiles. But after they got here, you haven't been associated with the Gentiles.
My dad, when I first told him about thinking about preaching full time, he told me that it was a bad idea. Not because he didn't like God, but because he was like, you're not gonna make any money, you're gonna live, a poor lifestyle, or it's not, you won't be able to make as much money as you want to be. So he had a real difficulty with it. It was just strange because me and my dad are like best friends. So it's almost like we always like the same thing. So I would say, me and my dad always agreed on almost everything. And it was just, pretty disappointing. I mean, pretty discouraging to me that my dad didn't agree in that regard. It was a little hard for me just to see him not agreeing 100% with it. Preaching was never a financial thing because it's my passion, so I'll do it no matter what. I mostly work with 4 congregations. I kind of do the evangelist job. That means that I go around different places. I think mostly being a preacher is difficulties dealing with people. It's extremely hard, because what we're trying to do is shape people into a certain kind of character. That's kind of the hardest job in the world, telling people to be more loving, not to be angry, they need to love more, or that they can, lust. Changing people's character is so hard, because they're like, well, I don't think I'm doing anything wrong, and then you have to show them in the Bible that they're doing something wrong. So I think the biggest challenge is making people see that God wants you to have a certain kind of character, and that you need to have that. So I think that people are the most difficult part of it. You know, you want people to know the gospel. You want them to learn. You want them to grow. You want more and more people to be part of your church and to be converted to Christ. And we live in times where people are not as interested in the gospel, especially the truth of the gospel. And there's a time where you preach to somebody for 3 or 4 months, and then they decide they don't want anything to do with it. I'm helping to save souls and take them to heaven. It's the most rewarding job, because you're giving people a better life, not in this world, but in the next one to come. I love preaching, and there's nothing else in this world that I would love to be doing. I love it. I'm passionate about it, and hopefully God blesses me with more opportunities and more success in it.